Tina Koto, Katoa, Assalamu alaikum, and very warm welcome in the New Zealand Pakistan Research Forum webinar series. I'm Imran Mohammad from Massey University, and I will facilitate today's discussion. Last month, we started the webinar series from the forum platform. The main aim of the webinar series is to showcase the members' research and policy expertise. So today's session will focus on big issues in business development. We will discuss business management, sustainable innovation, entrepreneurship, and well-being. It is my pleasure to welcome three distinguished guests, Dr. Fatima Junaid and Dr. Aymen Sajjad from Massey University, and Dr. Saud Khan from Victoria University, Wellington. In terms of the format, each speaker will talk about their research trajectory before going into detail about their research project and impact of their research project on business management. I would like to make this webinar a bit more interactive. Therefore, I would encourage everyone to ask the question, put some comments, or write your comments in the chat box as well. Okay, so let's start. And with the first speaker, Dr. Fatima Junaid. Fatima works at Massey Business School, and she's an expert on organizational behavior, well-being, and human resource management. Welcome, Fatima.
Thank you very much, Imran. I'll share my presentation and introduce myself then. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, we can see.
I'm Fatima Junaid. I did my PhD from Massey, Albany in 2017. And in 2018, I started working at Massey University as a lecturer. And it's been 3 years. I'm based in Palmerston North. My PhD, in my PhD, I looked at job stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, and how it influences employee behaviors. And my focus was to see how organizational support can build people's psychological resources so that employees could help themselves. Of course, my research was in Pakistan. So I was looking at the context of terrorism. And the idea was to look at how the burdens of everyday job sort of interacts with living with all the uncertainties or lack of safety that we have back home in Pakistan. And how that burden translates into behaviors. Do people still feel that they can cope at work? Does it lead to higher anxiety or burnout? And in doing so, I looked at what were some of the ways and mechanisms in which organizations could provide support to their employees so that they could have enough psychological strength to do what they're supposed to do in their lives. Some of the lessons that I learned, I will share a little bit later when we go on to our current projects and when we talk about the implications of my research. Currently, I am still focusing and working within organizational behavior and the area of well-being. And within this, I'm still looking at and I specialize in trauma, job stress, overall employee well-being, and organizational support. What that means is that I look at stress which comes from job or home, which are personal factors, or external factors that can affect our well-being, such as terrorism that I looked at in my PhD and afterwards in different projects, or now, for example, COVID. And how does it affect people, but more so in the context of what it means for people when they go to work. This sense of helplessness or fear that you feel for your loved ones, for example. The stress that you experience on a daily basis, does it burn people out? The kind of anxieties people might develop, some people even may go into depression, or if it has caused trauma because people have lost people or loved ones, how does that traumatic stress influence them when they go to their workplaces? So this is what I work or aim to work in, and this is my area of research. So with this little brief about myself, I will hand it over to Aymen, and then a little bit later then I will talk about what my current projects are, what are some of the lessons that I have learned, and where am I aiming to collaborate, where I'm currently collaborating with, and where am I wishing to collaborate. So thank you for this few minutes, listening to me.
Thank you, Fatma. And I think it's a very interesting, and even I can see from my own, perspective as an urban policy and planning perspective, that probably little bit on a bigger picture, not only the one organization, but a bigger picture, how the city level or how the government actually can support actually the people and their citizen as well in these external environment, terrorism and COVID. And we are doing some research on climate change actually, and that the climate change impact and what would be, we can provide the support. So thank you very much, Fatma. And our second speaker, Dr. Mohammad Saud Khan, work at Wellington School of Business and Government. He's an expert on strategic innovation, technology management, and entrepreneurship. So, Saud, Aymen, I think.
Is it me or Saud? Sorry,
Okay.
I think Saud can continue if
Okay.
Saud would like to.
Yeah,
it's fine either way. We can.
I think it's fine. We can start from Aymen, and just I think I have to introduce you, Aymen. And Aymen Sajjad also work at Massey Business School, but in Auckland campus. Aymen is an expert on business sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and sustainable development goals. Yes, welcome, Aymen, please.
Thank you, Dr. Imran. Good day, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aymen, and I'm currently working as a lecturer in sustainability in business and business management in the School of Management, Massey Business School. I'm excited to be here today to present and share my research work with you. I'm originally from Quetta, Balochistan, and Balochistan is the largest province of Pakistan in terms of land area, which is the southwest or southwestern region of the country near Iran and Afghanistan border area. I did my MBA in management and finance from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad in 2003, and Masters of Commerce in Performance Management from the University of Adelaide in 2008. So I started my professional career as a research associate at Balochistan University of Information Technology and Management Sciences, and I served there for about 7 years. I came to New Zealand in 2010 as a PhD student, and in 2016, I have completed my PhD degree in Sustainable Supply Chain Management from Massey University. And right after that, I've joined Massey as a lecturer. In my PhD, I've looked at how New Zealand companies were managing sustainable supply chain management practices in their supply chain operations. I'm also serving as an associate editor of Corporate Governance, the International Journal of Business and Society. Other than that, I'm a member of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility Group, which is a special interest group in the School of Management. So overall, my background is mostly in teaching, research, and consultancy in sustainability issues in management. My research interests mainly focus on sustainability issues that confront organizations and society. These include areas such as corporate social responsibility, corporate sustainability, business ethics, sustainable supply chain management, green supply chain management, and really other related areas such as United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and sustainability leadership. These are the two projects I'm currently working on, and I will share some of the preliminary findings of these projects with you today in the later part of the panel discussion. So the first project is about sustainability leadership, in which I'm exploring the notion of sustainable leadership in the post-COVID scenario, or how sustainability leadership should look like in a post-COVID world. So currently I'm in a process of developing a sustainability leadership framework that would enable us to better understand a key role of business leadership in achieving sustainability. And the second topic is about the COVID-19 impacts on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So that is all for now. And later, in the later half of the panel discussion, I will discuss these topics in more detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aymen. And it's very interesting, and I can see it a lot of sustainability perspective. And I look forward actually hearing something about the Sustainable Leadership Project, because I think it's a very important, especially in this current scenario. In our own school, actually, we started the Sustainable Development Goal Masters as well, and here in planning program, our focus is on SDG 11, Sustainable Cities mainly. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. And now our third speaker, Dr. Saud Khan from Wellington School of Business and Government. Saud, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Imran. Okay, so my screen is visible to everyone. Okay, good. Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this exchange on innovation and entrepreneurship aspects and the kind of work that I'm doing right now. So before we get started on a little bit of what I've been doing, I think I'll take the liberty of being an innovation guy, and I'll flip the way things are being done. So I'll go into my projects in this session, and in the later part, I'll talk a little bit briefly on the impact aspects of all these projects that we are going to discuss here. So a little bit on my background and academic journey up till now. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I've been studying and staying mostly in Rawalpindi. After that, I've done an engineering degree from NUST in mechatronics. And then I did a master's in Switzerland in management, technology, and economics, followed by a PhD in innovation management and entrepreneurship from Austria, and finally doing an postdoc in business development from University of Southern Denmark. Currently, I'm based as a senior lecturer in innovation and entrepreneurship at Victoria University of Wellington, where I study both of these areas. So the primary reason to show this information over here is that if you look at the trajectory of my studies, they have always been interdisciplinary. Starting off from mechatronics, robotics and automation, which is a combination of mechanical, electronics, and computer science, going into a technical MBA. It's not a pure MBA, it's a technical MBA. So that's again something which is overlapping in multiple fields. And then innovation and entrepreneurship by design is very interdisciplinary. So that's the reason I wanted to share this at this stage. Moving on, the research landscape. These are the major areas in which I have been working in the past since my PhD, and currently I sort of go back and forth within these major themes of research. So the first topic is entrepreneurial teams, and I'll go a little bit deeper into these two topics, which are very close to my heart, I would say. Entrepreneurial teams and social media entrepreneurship. And broadly speaking, recently I've started working on innovation management in relation to high-tech technologies and big data. So that's the third stream of research where I'm sort of pushing for these days. Again, as you can see, these three areas are intersecting at strategy, OB, and entrepreneurship and innovation. So I can clearly see, having listened to the earlier speakers, there might be a lot of areas where we can start having conversations, for further work. Okay, so I'll go a bit deeper now into the two topics that I have talked about. The first one is on team entrepreneurship, where I've been working on in my PhD. And this work has primarily evolved around the aspect of context. Why is the context of teamwork important for entrepreneurs rather than solo work? And the main premise around that is that most of high-tech startups are founded and run by entrepreneurial teams, and they are not solo entrepreneurs who are doing this. So that boils down to the main fact that we need to study and examine this unit of analysis in a lot of detail. As you can see over here, there are a lot of aspects around entrepreneurial teams which brings their importance to the limelight, that we have been working with venture capitalists. Entrepreneurial teams have an imprinting effect. They sort of lead to the survival of a firm in the long run. And it's not all good when we talk of these entrepreneurial teams. There are certain unique challenges that we need to keep in mind when we are looking at them. And the first one comes around interpersonal processes, how people and humans interact with each other. Besides that, a lot of entrepreneurial teams have early exits. They start up as teams, but they exit very quickly. And that is again linked to their interpersonal dynamics, which is very important. At the heart of both of these things comes a high degree of uncertainty within this context of entrepreneurial teams. If we try to combine these two aspects of uncertainty and this unique team setting, we can see that the startups that are founded by entrepreneurial teams, they have a very challenging time when they are going through the entire entrepreneurial process, starting from founding till the time it becomes a big company. The unique aspect here is that the social situation for such teams is very weak. When they come into being, there are no set rules and playbook to follow. So whatever is set up is being set up by the founding members, which makes it very crucial to develop a culture which is long lasting for such a firm and is more sustainable in the long run. The initial decisions that are taken by the team, they will have a founding impact on what the team is going to make in terms of hiring further within the firm. So these three aspects tell us the importance of why it is important to study the subject of entrepreneurial teams as a unit of analysis. So within my PhD, I was looking at these three aspects, which you can see over here: trust, conflicts, and interaction of entrepreneurial team members, and how does it impact their performance eventually. And we were looking at teams which were based in business incubators in Austria. Two other aspects which are important to consider here is diversity in personalities. How does that interact with trust and conflicts? And what role does diversity, how do we understand diversity in entrepreneurial teams? In the current scenario of the COVID world, what we are living in, is diversity even important to consider when we are working virtually, right? So these are some of the important things which I feel are very crucial when we talk of team entrepreneurship as a subject. The second project and research stream where I'm involved with is this area of social media entrepreneurship. And here I'm just highlighting the colleague with whom I've been working in the past. She's based in Scotland, Dr. Veronica Gustafsson. And this is the project that I would like briefly touch upon over here as well. So the aspect which we are trying to understand in this project is, how is entrepreneurship seen as a method, like a scientific method, which can be taught to anyone who would like to learn, right? In terms of this laundry list of things which I have mentioned over here, these are the things which distinguish entrepreneurship as a method. So it's something which there's a lot of debate going on in entrepreneurship, that can entrepreneurship be seen as something which is there in the genes of someone, or it's a personality trait, or it's something which can be taught. So recently people have started talking about this aspect of entrepreneurship being seen as a method. And how we have tried to illustrate this is by looking at the aspect of social media, how people evolve through social media and become entrepreneurs, how they are more and more going into this as a source of income, and they develop an entrepreneurial identity over a course of time. They don't want to leave their permanent jobs. At the same time, they want to have a hybrid entrepreneurial version of themselves working in parallel. So this has huge implications for economies where something like New Zealand, where 97% of the economy is SMEs, small and medium enterprises. So if you can start working as an SME from home with your main job, this opens up new doors of avenues to talk about research in this space of social media entrepreneurship. There are a huge number of blogs that are currently there in the world, and they are all monetizing day by day. This is just to give you a sense of what we figured out up till now. We have seen that this is how people move towards an entrepreneurial career in the social media domain. There's a phase which we call the preparatory phase, where people prepare themselves and they bring in a lot of virtual networks and demonstrate their skills and knowledge to people on these platforms. And then there's a second phase where they start monetizing their knowledge in different ways. So the business models around monetization are, you can see publication of books based on the posts that you write. Then you can promote and endorse on behalf of other corporate stakeholders. And you can even use your professional services and offer those services via Skype and other forms to make money. So all of these findings, which you can see, are based on a case analysis of a Russian doctor whose case study we worked on. And the recent article that I shared with you was based on that case. So this is just to give you a snapshot of the two main streams, social media entrepreneurship and team entrepreneurship, where I have been involved in much more detail. Besides this, I've been working on several other projects, which are related to business incubators in New Zealand, as well as looking at this new idea of mompreneurship, where female mothers who are becoming entrepreneurs from home, how is it creating new sorts of challenges for themselves and for the whole entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. I would say this is where I will stop, and I'll get back on the impact part of these projects later on in relation to COVID.
Thank you very much, Saud. And I think very interesting, especially I can see the the background as well, from engineering to the movement to the bit management area and entrepreneurship. And one thing is quite interesting because you mentioned about the blogs, and I have an example in my field as well, Greater Auckland blog actually, and I wrote a paper right now, it's submitted in European Planning Studies, and that have an impact actually that changed the government and the different political parties, the policy direction in Auckland transport. And this just started, I mean, rather than a very serious blog, they are just students, Auckland students, and they started the blog, but they run so professionally that have an impact on the very high level kind of a national and city level policy. So thank you very much for that. And I think probably I can see if the audience have some question or a comment on any of the speaker. Yes, Fatima, please.
I wanted to comment, actually, both Aymen and Saud, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I was listening to Aymen, and he was talking about leadership in COVID, sustainable leadership under COVID. And there is, I don't know whether it relates or not, but there's some work which I would like to talk about as some of the work that I am now currently undertaking, where we're trying to see who are the leaders, or actually who are the managers, and what mechanisms can they provide so that they can support their employees while they are working under the COVID-19 circumstances. So does that somehow overlap with your sustainable leadership or not? And then I'll have a question and a point for Saud as well.
Okay.
Yes, Fatma, it does. We have got two goals. I think goal number 4, which is good health and well-being, and there is another one, which is goal number 9. I think that is about, I don't precisely remember the name of that goal, but both of them, they link to how, what role leadership can play in terms of improving the well-being of employees, especially during and after the COVID, because we don't know to how long these the impacts of COVID-19 or effects of COVID-19 will last. So that is an ongoing thing, and sustainable leadership will be very, very important. Compassionate leadership, you may call it responsible leadership. All of this is going to be very, very important for next few years, because we don't know what would be the long-term impact would look like. So yeah, of course, I see some parallel or some overlaps here.
I think we should sometime after this session, we should have a talk about sort of what we are trying to do and what you are trying to do, and map it. And if there are overlaps, we could do something together as well, if that works for you.
Yeah, and that's one of the purpose of this forum is, in fact, to find opportunities for research collaboration. Yeah, thanks. Fatma, by the way, there is a question for you as well from the audience, and
Yes.
I can say it.
Yes.
Probably if I will read it, that there is a stigma attached to stress, anxiety, and people are reluctant to talk about this openly in Pakistan. So do you think this is same in New Zealand? And in terms of organization, do you think they are serious about this? Because many organizations have a well-being policies, but how they perceive or apply may be different. Yeah.
So thank you, Wahid, for asking the question. I think in Pakistan, there is indeed a stigma. It is considered sort of a sign of weakness. Especially, we are seeing comparison, even when I was collecting data, that men, especially in interviews, would talk about stress that other men felt, but not really what they felt. So it was easier to tap into the stress when you asked indirect questions about others as compared to if you asked them. Whereas women were quite open in terms of talking about it. Having said that, if you talked about dealing with it or actually seeking professional help, that has a far bigger stigma. And I'm not talking about only going to a counselor, but even if there are mechanisms within your organization for any kind of assistance, like employee assistance programs, which are there in some of especially the multinationals, people will be reluctant to go there, both men and women, for different kinds of reasons. Whereas if there was an organization-wide training, they would attend it, because then it's not you who's being pointed out as having stress. You are just attending a training because everyone is a part of it. So that kind of gives you the picture of how it is in Pakistan. In New Zealand, surprisingly, you would think that it would possibly not be like that. But again, here also, a lot of people will not talk about it. New Zealand people are very quiet when it relates to dealing with grief, especially, or loss. Their way of dealing it is just be quiet and just be close. The indigenous population is very different. They are very, let's talk about it, cry it out, irrespective of gender. But Pakeha population is different. So that was something that was interesting and new for me to understand. Now, coming to New Zealand organizations, there are there's a lot of support within every organization, and they kind of make it a part of process. So everyone kind of goes through it. I'll give you an example. Massey and many other organizations are providing sessions across the board to everyone in terms of how to deal with students who are at risk, but also what are the implications of the burdens of it on teachers who are listening to the students who are going through difficulties. So they're not saying go to the counselor, but they're overall providing it across the board. And then there are, of course, one-on-one sessions as well. Of course, it's more acceptable here in New Zealand as compared to Pakistan, or it's more adopted here as compared to Pakistan. And therefore, I felt that what I was doing was very, could be very useful, because it was enabling organizations to help their employees gain psychological strength. So once I talk about the projects that I am involved with, I will also talk a little bit about the implications that all of this has had for Pakistan and the wider community, but for Pakistan as well. Yeah. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah. Thanks, Fatima, for your detailed answer. And I think you can probably naturally can go to your some project as well if you want to go. I mean, want to discuss some of your research project or a research impact or a.
Could I do that after I have just one point for Saud, and then could I do that?
Yep. Yeah, sure.
Saud, I also wanted to ask you that when you were talking about mompreneurs, the mothers who are becoming entrepreneurs, I have been recently reading the literature around the stress and the creativity of those women and what it means for their entrepreneurial projects. So if is that something that you are looking at, or if you ever are looking at, I'll be more than happy to kind of connect and work on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
Should I give a brief response on it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I think the good part about this is that what we have done right now is we've done a very pilot sort of a study of examining mompreneurs just to get a sense of what sort of challenges do they face in a very broad sense. So it's good that you pointed out that this area of stress and all these things can be zoomed in a little bit, and we will definitely get in touch and touch base on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So currently, what I'm working on is, of course, because I've just finished PhD 3 years ago, I'm still working on some of the areas within my own research. which was looking at stress of terrorism and job and how it influences employee behaviors and how organizations can provide support. So I had collected data on a lot of things, like how mindfulness or a sense of gratitude can help people cope with the stress. If you are grateful for things that you have, it is likely to reduce the detrimental consequences of the stress that you go through. And same is for mindfulness and other aspects. So I had collected data on quite a lot of factors which can help reduce, and how then organizations can provide assistance with developing mindfulness or developing a sense of gratitude amongst employees. So I'm building a little bit more on that. The second project that I'm looking at is with a Canadian group who basically look at loss, trauma, and its implication as a wider implication outside the organization and within the organization. But we are looking at especially in relation to the March 15 terror attack in Christchurch. So there's a huge data set where we have asked people how they felt right after the attack and some days later. And it looks into Islamophobia and views towards immigrants or people of color, how people dealt with grief. And so there's a quite rich data, and we're trying to work through that. Within Massey, I've just started developing this project that I was talking to Aymen about with the CARE, which is in our body in our journalism and communication department, in ways to develop support for employees within organization under the context of coronavirus and political instabilities, if there are in countries. So we'll start with New Zealand, but then we can look at Pakistan, India, and other countries. I do a talk series in Pakistan on stress and well-being with the women's, there is social media women's group with more than 6,000 members, where I talk about how can they help themselves gain more psychological strength. And just yesterday, I did a talk on COVID stress and how women can manage and deal with that stress at a communal level. We are in the process of building a project on psychosocial risks and how job designs can reduce psychosocial risks. That's more of a New Zealand-based project. So these are some of the projects that I am looking at the moment.
Well,
the implications, of course, we know that in Pakistan, people will be stressed, some people will be traumatized, and so I won't reiterate those things. But some of the things that I would take a moment to explain is that when there's a continued conflict and people are living through it, research shows that it hardens their hearts. What basically that means is that they get habituated, they get used to it, and they get a bit desensitized. And you can see the examples of it that, in Pakistan, a major killing will happen. And yet the next day people will be celebrating. On the same day, people will be going around. And a lot of people would think, how can they operate like that? That's a coping mechanism. A good or a bad is a different question, but that's a coping mechanism, which basically tells a human being that don't feel the pain. But the downside of it is that then people don't feel the pain for others and they lose sensitivity. A lot of the insensitive killings that have happened, we have seen a lot of rape cases being talked about in the media. All of this, it collectively at a community level, what it does is that it makes people lose faith in the goodness of people. And people start losing trust in people. And that's why you would see a lot of conspiracy theories in Pakistan. If anyone does anything good, people will say they must be doing it for this reason or that reason, because there's a collective loss of the goodness in people, the trust in people. And because, and sometimes people say, don't say Pakistan has terrorism. I would like to state here, I recalculated the death toll. There are still 1,000 people on average dying every year that are reported due to suicide type bombing or shooting within a mosque or a school, so forth. So there is still that also happening, and on top of it, COVID. So collectively, this chronic stress makes people not just annoyed and irritable, but it also leads to chronic poor mental health. And we have very few psychologists out there. So one of the things, if someone is listening, is that I would really like to collaborate with psychologists, for instance, to work on developing ways and mechanisms or interventions that we can provide to organizations so that they can help their employees. Thanks.
Thank you, Fatima. I think it's a very, very interesting, and because I did some research on the international aid and NGOs and their role in Pakistan. So especially for this conspiracy theories and how people, although they are receiving all these benefits and how they are thinking, I think that's really, really interesting, and probably it will become a part of the institutional structure as well. So thank you. Very interesting. So I don't know who would like to go first now, Saud or Aymen,
You can
talking
go
about
first
your research project.
You want to go first, or should I continue?
You can go first. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I will just quickly provide you a brief background of what sustainability means to business organization and how it is understood and conceived in the business context. The term sustainability originated from this idea of sustainable development, and the Brundtland Commission, or which is also called the World Commission on Environment and Development, provided a well-known and very famous definition of sustainable development. And the Commission defined sustainable development as development that meets the needs of present without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, what does this means to companies? Corporate sustainability is related to three dimensions of sustainable development that are social, economic, and environment. This view is typically also referred to as triple bottom line, and the triple bottom line concept encourages the business to consider not only the traditional bottom line of profit, but also begin to think about business performance in terms of social and environmental improvement. So for corporations, for companies, it means issues around corporate social responsibility, citizenship, improved management of social and environmental issues, and improved stakeholder engagement. The first project I'm currently working on, and I believe this topic is very, very important and relevant to the post-COVID sustainable development scenario. Business leaders play a very, very critical and very important role in corporate sustainability strategy. And without their commitment and support and their active engagement, it is almost impossible to successfully implement corporate sustainability strategy. So in this research project, we are looking at the nature of sustainable leadership and how it contributes to transformational change during COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed dramatic and unprecedented disruption to established way of managing lives, organizations, and societies. a crisis can trigger, a range of psychological and physiological responses that include heightened sensitivity, distress, trauma, and mental health issues, and so on. So in such circumstances, demonstrating highly visible and caring leadership behavior and sustainable leadership behavior becomes even more important. So we know that COVID-19 pandemic is not the first global pandemic, and it won't be the last. Therefore, it is highly important to understand and better conceptualize the sustainable leadership phenomena that could help and prepare corporate managers and leaders to effectively and responsibly manage business operation and contribute to social, economic development of the region. This is the framework we have developed, but I won't be going into explanation of this framework, but I will just, in summary, what I would like to say is that there is now an urgent need for a new model of business leader, one that makes long-term sustainability and resilience of our world a top priority. Now and in the future, successful businesses will be those that meets the needs of as many people as possible, utilize few resources as possible, and engage and are responsive to many stakeholders as possible. So this is not only the right thing to do, but also a smart thing to do. Business simply cannot thrive in the world of poverty, disease, hunger, inequality, unrest, and environmental stress. So strong leadership has become more important than ever before. As you can imagine, it is no longer enough to know how to run your business. Those in leadership position, they must now adapt, grow, and sharpen their focus to thrive in the post-pandemic world. So in other words, business as usual is not an option anymore. And progression post-COVID will require sustainable, cooperative, and compassionate leadership. So that's the first the first topic or the first project I'm working on. And maybe during the discussion time, if you would like to ask any question about this framework, you can ask. The second topic, if time permits.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the time as well, and
So just quickly about the SDGs. This was introduced by the United Nations in 2015. So there are 17 goals altogether and 169 actionable targets. What I believe about SDGs is that there is nothing new in that. We know about, we have been dealing with poverty, hunger, and all these issues for many, many years. So one thing that is new and interesting about this SDGs is that it requires collective effort, and it is developed for both developing and developed world, and it requires a holistic kind of approach in order to address these issues. Now, if you look at this is some of the findings of a very recent research report by the United Nations Sustainable Development, United Nations, and if you see that in this survey about more than 1,000 people participated, and this question, if you look at this result, is your company on track to achieve the SDGs by 2030? About more than 53% or around 55% of the participants mentioned that they believe that they're off track, and they believe that their country won't be able to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030. Just to link it with this idea of sustainable leadership, why it is very, very important, because from the participant, when they were asked about what are the major barriers to achieve the sustainable development goals in their country, the first thing which came out was lack of critical leadership or lack of business leadership. And that is why I believe this topic, this area, or this issue is extremely important, because leadership, they need to embrace this idea of sustainable development goals. Otherwise, probably this will. So I won't be talking much about the business role. Maybe that will be during the discussion time. But just to quickly show about the short-term impacts. If you look into this slide, you see the first, second, third. All these goals shows that there is very high negative impacts on these first three goals, whereas also on decent work and economic growth, we can also see that there is highly negative impact due to COVID-19 pandemic. So some of these goals will be really negatively impacted by the COVID-19 COVID-19 pandemic. The only exception is goal number 13, which is climate change. And we know that because of reduced business activity, climate change has kind of, it benefit this goal number 17. Overall, what I would say that one thing which is very important is the collaboration and engagement. All these various sector, whether it be government sector, business sector, NGO sector, or tertiary education sector, scientific organization, all of these different sectors, they need to actively engage in order to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And for that, sustainable leadership plays a very critical role. So because it all comes from the top management or from the senior leadership. And if they are not really engaged, or if they are not really serious about these goals, then probably it would be almost impossible to achieve these goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aymen. And because we are running out of time, so probably we'll go straight to the Saud and his work. But Aymen, I like this political leadership kind of the main focus, that one of the survey mentioned. So that was very interesting, actually.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm hoping my screen is visible. Okay. So, yeah. So starting off with the impact aspect of the two projects that I had talked about. Am I audible?
Yep.
Okay.
That's good.
So the first project that I had talked about was regarding team entrepreneurship, and having realized that we are running very short on time, I'll just talk very briefly on the key learnings from each of these projects. So the first one on team entrepreneurship, the essence of this project is how can these softer issues, as we call them, trust, conflicts, personality traits, and all these things, the deep level diversity and all these aspects, how do they impact the bottom line and the monetary aspects of a team or a startup's effectiveness and efficiency? That's how I would see the impact of this entire project in a one-line sentence. The next thing that I see in the second project, which is on social media entrepreneurship, the important impact aspect of this project is that bloggers and other social media actors and entrepreneurs are already showing signs of becoming institutional entrepreneurs. So when I say institutional entrepreneurs over here on the slide, I mean, I can give you an example of Sweden, where the fashion industry is evolving so fast that now there is no need for fashion journalism in Sweden, because people, bloggers are being seen as main endorsers of a lot of fashion. So this is the kind of impact that people are having, from small entrepreneurs who are starting their blogs to replacing large companies and industries and becoming institutional entrepreneurs at some point in time. So that's how I see the impact of this research and stream of research, where it is going and why it's important to study it at this stage. Now going a little bit on the COVID and New Zealand related aspects, if I reflect on those, This is just to give you an idea of what has happened in the early lockdown period and what impact it is having on the small business sector within New Zealand. So as you can clearly see, there's been a huge drop in the revenue going down to 34% in April and another 10% fall in March. I think we started off our first lockdown somewhere in that period. So that's how it's kicked in. This is a thing just to give you an idea on the job aspects on small businesses. You must realize that in New Zealand, we have 97% are SMEs in this sector and about 500,000 are small and medium businesses. When I say small and medium, they are 20 people or less employed. This is just to give a regional flavor to it. Auckland, as we all know, has been hit worst in terms of the regions. And then we see Hawke's Bay and Northland, two other areas which have seen this employment impact, which is continuing right now. And finally, I would just wrap it up by giving some food for thought to everyone who's part of this webinar on how we can see this COVID situation and what it means for us as researchers and academics. So up till now, we've been looking at entrepreneurs as the main driving force for any disruption. But right now we can see that it's more than that. We can have an invisible enemy as well, right? And the kind of implications that it is having, we can all see. From an entrepreneurship perspective, when everything is so fluid, where do you draw the line? What are the new avenues of co-creating new opportunities? Those are the things that we need to start thinking about, right? When we are doing research, there are a lot of theoretical anchors that we are using. How many of those theoretical anchors are based on social distancing? Was any social psychology theory talking about social distancing? But those are hidden assumptions, right? So how much of that discourse is now meaningful for us in today's world? Now the things are going all virtual. Can we still use them or not use them? What type of businesses will pop up? Now, will people only bring small businesses which are temporary in nature to finish in a certain period of time? Is that going to be the new normal for entrepreneurship or a new culture that is going to come? And finally, we're just tying in with what Fatima and Aymen had talked earlier. There is a lot to think about these sustainable ways of working. When we are thinking of these waves of new normal which are coming, lockdown after lockdowns, how can we sustain? Is there a community resilience project that can happen? Can the community step up? Is it only the entrepreneurs that we are looking at, or the normal man can step up and do some things differently in this new scenario? And eventually, all the new vulnerabilities that are being created for all of us as human beings, the uncertainties that are coming in our lives, they are definitely going to impact our well-being. And what is it that entrepreneurs need to think about when we talk of well-being? And that is where I think we bring this to complete closure, as I would say. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Saud, and especially, I mean, the last slide, the food for thoughts as well. You know, I have learned a lot from all three of you, so, and I'm sure all the participants also have learned as well. And thank you very much for engaging. Actually, so I can see that there is a question that's coming from the audience, and I can see that you are responding as well, but there is a one burning question before we will close. I can see that we are running out of time, but I think we can go ahead. One burning question from Wahab, and Wahab, you can speak if you can. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Imran. I have two quick questions, one with Dr. Fatima and one with the panelist. Dr. Fatima talked about the workplace or workplace implication for Pakistanis. So I just want to ask that you understand that there is stress or anxiety or mental issues in Pakistan. So keeping in view the context of Pakistan workplace, what do you suggest to the organizational leaders? What should they do in that situation? The question with the panelist is that I feel like there is a gap between academic world and the practical world, specifically in Pakistan context. Because in New Zealand, I see there are some internship opportunities related to specific companies who ask for proposals and also companies has projects for research and development projects. But in Pakistan, there is a big gap. Academics are doing something else and practical problems are something else. So my question is, from the panelists, what do you suggest to bridge this gap of practical academic world? Thank you very much.
I'll answer the question. Thank you so much, Wahab. Quickly, to state this, there is quite a bit of research that has come out in terms of the current circumstances as to what managers can do or leaders can do. And the biggest thing is to show compassion and empathy. Now, the problem that lies for our context, for which I want to do a bit more research, is that when there has been continued conflict or exposures to extremities, and media showing a lot of dehumanizing things, empathy and compassion sort of takes a back seat, unfortunately. And empathy and compassion is actually reduced in people because it hardens people. So for that, what can we do? And I am talking to some of the organizations with whom I had collected data in terms of what are the ways in which we can actually sensitize people to be more compassionate and to be more empathetic from a managerial perspective, like Aymen was talking about the leadership post-COVID or during COVID. Your second question relating the gap, actually in Pakistan also, I think there have been a lot of projects that happen which are industry university interactive. For instance, I remember when I was a master's student, I developed a health and safety plan for the UFON, actually for Pakistan-wide, I think back in 2005 or 6. And we developed a complete remuneration plan for the National Highway Authority, where the National Highway Authority collaborated with PhD students and their supervisors to come up with a new remuneration plan, which they actually adopted, scaffolding it within 1 year's time. So there is some of that happening. I think COVID has led to a little bit more of the interaction. I was seeing talking series from LUMS yesterday, which is asking academics and non-academics to come on the panels, like Imran is kind of initiating now, where people can come from academia, but can come from outside as well. But of course, a lot more can be done. So these are my 2 cents on both the questions.
Look, thank you very much, everybody. And looking at the time, I'm a bit afraid that I have to close the session. And there, if you have any question or a comment, please send an email directly to these, the panel members. And even I can see that there is a lot of overlapping thing, and with my own research as well. And if you are interested to collaborate or some ideas to explore, please contact them directly. And also please join me to say thank you to all participants. Thank you to the panel member. So thank you very much. And thank you very
to
much.
The audience.
Yeah.
Thank you to the audience.
And then see you next month with another interesting topic. So thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.